from New Jersey. And she ran a great campaign, and we worked hard together. Didn't get the result we wanted, but worked hard and put forward a really substantive, smart campaign for Californians. And then we worked together to help Mitt Romney become president of the United States. And Meg was one of those people who was calling me early and telling me she knew Mitt Romney, and Mitt was a friend of hers, and I should want to be with him. And she was one of the main driving forces behind getting me to endorse Mitt Romney very, very early in October of 2011, and working as hard as we both did for him. That also led to some disappointing results, but none that we're ashamed of, especially after we watch what's happened to this country in the 3 years since that campaign, and how much better off this country would be today if Mitt Romney were president of the United States rather than Barack Obama. So I appreciate Meg coming and diving into this fight with me, and she is doing it like she does everything else in her life, like she ran eBay, like she's running Hewlett-Packard now, organized, tenacious, and jumped in with both feet, and also incredibly encouraging. You know, when you're in some of those hotel rooms by yourself late at night, and you're a candidate for president of the United States, some of the best text messages I get at 11 or 12 o'clock at night are from Meg Whitman, because it's only 8 or 9 o'clock at night in California. And I tell her all the time, she said to me, is it too late? I go, it's never too late. I'm always awake, watching TV and sitting there by myself, and it's great to have a friend who sends you that text message. And it's almost never with strategy. It's always with encouragement. And that's a really good friend to have. So thanks for being here, Megan, for all your help. So let's talk about this race. We had some voting yesterday in Iowa, and nothing really changed. Now, I always thought Ted Cruz was going to win Iowa, and he did. I always thought Donald Trump was going to lose, and he did. And I always thought Marco Rubio would come in third, and he did. And then everything else after that really meant absolutely nothing. All the rest of us were kind of bunched up between 2% and 9%. So nothing really changed yesterday from Iowa. Everything we thought was going to happen happened. Now the fun starts. Because New Hampshire, you all, except for giving Donald Trump a big lead in the polls earlier, everybody else is bunched up exactly that way, except we can't all stay that way. You're going to have to make some choices now. And the interesting thing is that you got to figure out who is really going to be the person who's going to be able to not only go down to Washington, D.C. and burn down the status quo that has so disappointed us, but who's going to be able to rebuild it after you burn it down. See, anybody can burn it down. You get some gasoline and some matches, you can burn it down. Easy to do that. The hard part is we got to rebuild it. We have no choice but to rebuild it, because we need a national defense. We need Homeland Security. We want Social Security and Medicare to continue for our elderly who've worked hard and paid into the system. And all those things are only provided by the federal government. So as much as at times we'd all like to just burn the whole thing down and leave it in ashes down there on the Potomac River, we got no choice. So who's going to be able to rebuild it? I would just say this to you, that I did a lot to turn around Trenton, New Jersey with a Democratic legislature. And a lot of people thought it couldn't be done, but we did it. We did it. We reformed teacher tenure. We capped property taxes. We cut taxes to business. We lowered spending. We have 10,000 fewer employees today in state government than we had when I started. And we did that all without any layoffs, all by attrition and getting greater efficiencies out of the government, demanding that my cabinet secretaries do better and manage and do just as much with less. All the things that you say you want in government that I hear people complain about all the time, I've done them. And I can do them in Washington, D.C. Let's remember one thing about this race, too, and then I want to take your questions. And that is that 7 years ago, we as a country made a huge mistake. We trusted a guy who was young and good-looking and could give a great speech. And the only thing he'd ever done in his life, in terms of management, was managing a 30-person United States Senate staff as a first-term United States Senator. And we gave that person the most complex management job over the biggest government in the entire world. And we wondered to ourselves, after it was over, why is it not working well? Well, why would it work well? The guy's never managed a thing in his life. And so all of a sudden now he gets put in charge of the biggest government the world's ever known, and he doesn't know how to run it. Well, of course he doesn't know how to run it. He wouldn't, understand how to run bingo night at the Senior Citizen Center in Manchester. It would be too complicated. This is a complicated government. Now, let's not make the same mistake again 7 years later, because we're in the driver's seat as Republicans. Let us not nominate a first-term United States senator who's never managed anything. I mean, let's face it, Marco Rubio's been a United States senator now for 5 years. 5 years. And for 2 of those years, he's been running for president. Ted Cruz has been a United States senator for 3 years. And all 3 of those years, he's been running for president. They have, I saw Marco give an interview the other night on television. They asked him his accomplishments. He couldn't come up with one. He talked about fighting against this and fighting against that. And they said, well, were you successful? Well, no, I wasn't successful, but I fought against it. When you're a governor, people expect you to accomplish things, whether it's all the things I just mentioned or what Richard talked about. When a snowstorm hits, they want to hear, well, I put the plows on the trucks. I don't know why the roads aren't clear. I put the plows on the locomotives. I don't know why the trains aren't running. Not my fault. I put the plows on. You don't want to hear that. You want to see the roads clear. You want to see the trains running. And you want someone who's going to get the job done you elected them to do. Just because we agree with Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz philosophically, much more than we'd ever agree with Barack Obama, doesn't mean either of them is ready to be president of the United States. Because they're not. Because they've never done it. And if you haven't done it, we've seen for the last 7 years what on-the-job training looks like in the White House. It is an ugly thing to watch. And there is no owner's manual in the top center desk drawer of the Oval Office. You got to know how to do it when you get there. So New Hampshire, you can make this race go one way or another. You can make it go towards strength and maturity and have a tested leader to lead our party against Hillary Clinton, who is going to be the Democratic nominee. Because she beat Bernie Sanders in Iowa, everybody. She's not losing almost any place else other than maybe here. She's going to be the Democratic nominee. So you better put somebody tough and tested and ready up there, or we're going to lose. But worse yet, what if we won with someone who wasn't ready to be president? Then we would be doing exactly the same things that have been going on in the last 7 years, just from the different side of the aisle. I don't want to see that happen to our country. I don't want to see that happen to our children and grandchildren. I don't want to see that happen to our fighting men and women who need a commander-in-chief who's experienced and knows how to make decisions because he's made them before. I don't want to see that happen to our veterans who's waiting for someone to come and take control of the VA and restore it to providing services in a timely basis for veterans who we promised we would do that for. So we got a lot of work to do. But here's the good news. We got time. And you've got time in the next 7 days, if you haven't made a decision yet, to make one. 7 days. Tick tock, tick tock. We operate well in the dark and we don't need a microphone. So, this comes the fun part of the program. You get to ask questions and I get to answer them. And there's only one rule in a New Hampshire town hall meeting. I've done 134 town hall meetings as governor of New Jersey. In New Jersey, I have 4 rules. In New Hampshire, only one. That will tell you the biggest thing you need to know about the difference between New Jersey and New Hampshire. We need 4 rules to control the unruly people. Only one rule for you very kind and generous people here in New Hampshire. So here's the one rule. Raise your hand and I call on you. It's that simple. And I will answer your question. You may not like the answer. You may love the answer. But I will guarantee you one thing. You will not walk out of here today confused. You will know exactly what I think and exactly how I feel. And we will have an understanding with each other. And I hope that understanding leads to me getting your vote on Tuesday. So, raise your hand, I'm ready to go to work. Who's got a question? Yes, ma'am, right there.
Question. It might sound kind of like a mean question.
Uh-oh.
I don't mean it to be mean, because I really like it. But one of the things when we say, oh, we're going to see Christie, we say, well, he's a hothead.
Really?
Well, that's what they say.
Do I look like that?
Well, I think he is, but you have to be a hothead sometimes to get things done. But give me some more positive slants on that.
Listen, I find this funny, right? Because here's the thing. You know why I get angry? I get angry at injustice. I get angry at inefficiency. I get angry at waste and abuse of your money. I get angry about people who are hypocrites, who say they're there for you, but they're not there for you. And I feel like it's my job as the governor to fight for you. I fight a lot. I absolutely fight a lot. But when I fight for you. It's not for me. I don't get any more out of it or any less out of it if I fight for myself. I get paid the same salary. I have the same troopers driving me around, whether I'm angry or whether I'm calm, whether I'm fighting or whether I'm laid back. Are you sure? All right. Same thing, right? So to me, sounds to me like the electorate right now wants a fighter. I mean, why would we go to Washington and have somebody? We got no drama Obama right now, right? Who everybody kind of lays, hey, what's the problem? We'll get to it. Don't worry. You know, I mean, we need somebody who's going to go down there with a sense of urgency that's going to say, I'm going to turn this place upside down. But more importantly, that I know how to do that. So I think you're going to want a fighter. And I think what you say to folks is, don't look at how he's fighting. Look at what he's fighting for. That's what it's really all about. What am I fighting for? Am I fighting for a raise for myself? Am I fighting for things that don't matter to you? No. I'm fighting for things that you've told me you want me to do. And when people try to get in my way, you're darn right I'm going to try to run them over, because that's my job. Because unlike a senator who doesn't have to be responsible for anything, vote yes and vote no and then go home. And if they vote no, nothing happens. And if they vote yes and it does happen, guess who they give it to make it happen? The president. Here's this law, Mr. President, sign it and then make it happen. And we're going to come and vote for some more laws. This is what I don't get. Like, the job approval rating of Congress right now is 13%. 13% job approval for Congress. And here's my question. Who are the 13%? Like, who are those people who are going, yeah, look at that. Give me some more of that. I like that. Right? Right? And now here's what's even crazier. 13% approval. And we're actively talking about nominating for president someone from the institution that we have 13% approval of. This is why we never change Congress, because everybody says they hate Congress except for their congressman. Congress stinks except for my guy. My guy, he's great. Love my guy. My guy does an amazing job. The rest of them, awful. My guy, amazing, right? Can't be, right? It can't be that all of them are amazing, but the whole place stinks. So that's the stuff that aggravates me. That's the stuff that gets me going. And you know what? I make no apologies for fighting for the people who elected me. I will fight for the people who elected me every day I get the chance to do it. And if every once in a while I get a little too hot for your taste, then raise your hand and tell me I'm a little too hot for your taste. I take input, but be careful when you do it, all right? Yes, sir.
What would your first 100 days in office?
Hectic, but 4 things I would try to do in the first 100 days to get rolling. The first one is, on day 1, I would absolutely rescind all of the illegal and unconstitutional executive orders that this president has put in place. He has acted outside the Constitution and outside the law, and I would work during the transition to have my team look at the entire list of ones that need to be rescinded. And on the first day, we would sign an executive order rescinding all the ones that were illegal and unconstitutional. We'd do that first. Second, I would put together our tax reform package to go to Capitol Hill. Our tax reform plan is very simple, but I think going to be very effective. We get rid of all of the loopholes and deductions, all of them except for 2. Home mortgage interest deduction, charitable contribution deduction. Those are the ones real people use. Keep those, lower the rates to 28% on the high end, which is where it was when Reagan was president in '86, and 8% on the low end. People will be able to do their taxes in 15 minutes. We got to send that tax reform package quickly because of what Meg said in her introduction. The economy grew at 0.7% last quarter. We can't afford to go into another recession. So we need to move quickly on that. Third, I would send a package of bills to Capitol Hill to restore authority to the NSA, the CIA, and the FBI to begin to work harder to interdict terrorist attacks before they come here in this country. We need to give them the tools they need to be able to stop these folks before they attack us, not after they attack us. I know those tools. I used them for 7 years as a federal prosecutor. We stopped terrorist attacks in our state, and we can do it across the country. Fourth, I would pick up the phone and call the President of Mexico, the Prime Minister of Canada, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the President of France, the Chancellor of Germany, and the Prime Minister of Israel. I'll invite each of them inside that first 100 days to come individually to meet with me. The first couple hours, I just let them vent about all the ways they feel like they'd been mistreated over the last 8 years. And then the rest of the time, I would say to them, tell me what your vision is for America's future, your country's future, and the role of us working together to try to bring some peace to each other's countries and stability to the world. We need to rebuild those alliances, and we need to not wait a second because it's going to take a while to do it. And we've got enemies on the horizon like Russia, like Iran, that need to be dealt with. And we have a country in China that needs to be dealt with as well from a strategic perspective. And I'll be much better off on what maneuvers I can make strategically if I know that our allies have my back and that America's leading the world. Those are the four things that I would try to get done in the first 100 days. And one last thing that I don't think I'd even have to initiate if I have a Republican Congress. They will send me a repeal of Obamacare, and I'll sign it.
We each have a different question. I'll let my wife go.
Ah, the old bait and switch. From New Jersey, I'm familiar with this, sir. Very well done. Yes, ma'am.
I want to know how you can make Congress and the Senate work.
Well, this is something that I've had a lot of experience with in the last 6 years because I've had a Democratic legislature in New Jersey, completely dominated by the Democrats. 24-16 in the Senate, 48-32 in the lower house. So we're not even close. And so what that means is that I had to make a decision right at the beginning. Am I going to work with them or am I going to fight them all the time? Are we going to actually get things done, or am I going to work to try to make sure that we're going to get it done, or am I going to just hold my breath and stand in the corner? I decided we're going to get things done. So what that means is, first and foremost, you have to develop personal relationships with them. And some of the best advice I got right at the beginning of my governorship, I called Governor Tom Kean, who was the previous Republican governor and chairman of the 9/11 Commission. And I asked Governor Kean if I could come to his office once a week during the transition to ask him questions about being governor. And he said, sure. So I came for my first session with him. We sat down in his office in Far Hills, and he said to me, okay, the way this is going to work is I'm going to ask you questions, and then you're going to give me answers, and then I'm going to critique your answers. I said, okay. He said, first question, who's your best friend? And I said, Mary Pat. He said, not anymore. I said, not anymore? He said, no. Steve Sweeney, the president of the New Jersey State Senate, is going to be your new best friend. Now, I want to tell you about Steve Sweeney. Steve Sweeney is a Democrat, and he is the president, the leader of the Iron Workers Local in New Jersey, a real wallflower, a shy and retiring fella. So all of a sudden now we were going to be best friends, or at least that's what Governor Kean told me I had to do. He said, if you don't become best friends with this guy, you have no chance of being successful. You need to have the Senate president working with you. So I went about working on it. Dinners, lunches, out for drinks, late night phone calls, more late night phone calls, more late night phone calls. And eventually now I think if Steve were here, now Steve's getting ready to run for governor, so he probably wouldn't admit this anymore because it's not good for him as a Democrat. But the fact is that we've become very good friends and that we did a lot of things together. See, this is still a people business. We don't produce anything. We don't produce, any type of tangible good. We govern. And you need people to be able to cooperate with each other. So I'd work on personal relationships with those folks. Secondly, I'd set limits. I'd say to them, here's things that I'm unwilling to do. You need to know, here's the list of a few things that I will never, ever do. So don't ask me to do them because I won't. But then I'd say to them, everything else that's not on the list, I'm willing to talk about. See, because we all think that we're the only ones who come to town with principles, but we're not. And we all think because we got elected president that what everyone else got elected to doesn't matter, but that's not true. You elected these other people to the House and to the Senate. So with the principles they come with, we need to listen. As a leader, you have to spend at least half your time, if not more, listening, not talking. And if you do, a lot of times all people want is the respect of having their idea heard, even if it doesn't get done. And they'll cooperate with you to get done something that's maybe in between. Compromise is not a dirty word. It's not capitulation. And you got to be willing to do that and stand up and be a leader who makes those kind of decisions. And that's what I've done in New Jersey, and that's the exact same tack I would take when I become president of the United States. You have another one?
I'm a Vietnam War vet, and I, like a lot of vets, have had bad experiences with the VA. You say you're going to take good care of us vets. How are you going to do that?
Two ways initially. First way is a temporary fix. The second way is a longer-term fix. The short-term temporary fix is once I become president, we will authorize any veteran who has their veteran's card to present that card at any doctor or at any hospital anywhere and get medical care when they need it, and we will pay for it because that's what we promised you we would do. That's the short-term fix. The long-term fix is I would go to the person I consider to be the finest hospital CEO in the country, and I would approach that person and say, your country needs you for the next 2 years. You need to come to the VA and fix it. With all due respect to the admirals and generals, we don't need another admiral or general in charge of the VA. It's a hospital system. We need a hospital executive who understands how to run these things to get in there and to fix it. And that's exactly what I would do and demand results. And I think if you put someone who actually has the expertise in charge, you got a much better chance of being able to fix it. So those are the two things I would do on the VA. Short-term fix, so it deals with your medical care. Longer-term fix so that we don't eliminate the VA. We need the VA. It's got great expertise on everything from prosthetics to mental health and everything in between. But we need to get that done. Yes, ma'am.
I have a close friend who works full-time with a young daughter and another child on the way soon. She's expressed serious concerns about childcare and the cost of childcare. What do you plan on doing as president to make childcare affordable, specifically for children that are too young for preschool and kindergarten?
Yeah, it's a really hard thing, and I don't know what government can do to do that except to raise her wages and help her to be able to pay for it. I don't think that we want the government to get into starting another new government program that provides child care. The fact is that we have so many programs now that provide so many different things, and our country is in serious debt and deficit. And so what we need to do is to be able to raise her wages, to get her to make more money so that she can afford the child care that she needs. And private child care is going to be significantly better than anything that the government provides anyway. And so this is an issue of raising economic performance in this country. And for folks, I'm sure in her wage bracket, she hasn't gotten a real raise in 15 years. And that's obscene in this country, that folks who are making the median income cannot get an increase in salary. In fact, in Barack Obama's time, in the last 7 years, it's $4,000 less than they were making 7 years ago when adjusted for inflation. So that's, I think, the best way we can help your friend. She should be concerned. And child care is a concern for everybody. And you know what happens then? Even when you have the money to pay for it, then you're concerned about the quality of it. Then you're concerned about the person you're leaving your child with. And then you're feeling all of the guilt and the upset that comes with leaving your child every day. But we understand two things. One, that women and men in the society want to have careers outside the home and they find that fulfilling. And secondly, that our economy demands most of the time that both parents in the household both work. And so with that circumstance, we have to bow to the pressure of using childcare, but we got to be concerned about quality. The way the government can be most helpful is to make sure we're watching over the quality of the childcare that's provided more than funding it. And that's the way I would try to give her some peace of mind. But it will be really hard no matter what. And we've gone through it. You know, Mary Pat went back to work, I think with the exception of one of our children, 3 months after each of our 4 children was born. And I always remember how hard it was for her to get up and go to work that first day, not because she didn't want to go to work, but because she didn't want to leave Andrew or Sarah or Patrick or Bridget or all of them by the time we started stacking them up, back at home. And so it's not only a financial issue, and it is an important one, it's also a difficult emotional issue, and we got to be aware of that too and try to ensure quality so that the emotional issue becomes at least a little bit less of a concern. Tell her good luck. Yes, sir.
When and how are you going to take on Donald?
Well, here's the thing. Oh, couldn't hear the question? I'm sorry. He asked, when and how am I going to take on Donald? Was the question. There have been a lot of people asking me that because of what this lady asked me. All right, they're like, you're the hot guy, so why aren't you taking on Donald? I'm in this to win, not just to prove a point. And so there's been all this expectation that Donald Trump is the front runner, needs to be taken on. Is he the front runner anymore today? Well, maybe. We haven't had any new polls since he lost yesterday, and we don't know what it's going to look like. But here's the thing. I've been taking him on in every town hall meeting. Okay? When people ask me questions about his positions, I give honest answers. So much so that apparently yesterday on Good Morning America, they played one of the things that I've said at a town hall meeting for Donald, and Donald said, well, Chris and I used to be friends. And George Stephanopoulos said he really looked genuinely, Governor, like his feelings were hurt. And I said, listen, I've known Donald Trump for 13 years. He ain't that sensitive. Okay, so we're not worried about Donald Trump. Here's the thing. I've got to convince all of you first that I'm the best person. And when I convince you I'm the best person, if it then turns out to be me and Donald, I'll take him on. But there are going to be 7 or 8 people on that stage Saturday night. And I got to keep watching every one of my flanks, right? Because I got Governor Kasich shooting at me and Governor Bush shooting at me. You've all seen it. All of a sudden, my poll numbers went up here in New Hampshire, and all of a sudden, I became the most popular guy in your mailbox and on your TV set, and I wouldn't even recognize who the heck they were talking about. So let's not get too focused just on Donald, because, you know, polls don't vote, and they proved that in Iowa. You remember, the poll came out on Saturday in Iowa, said Donald Trump's going to win by 5 points, and he lost by 4. That means they were 9 points wrong. I mean, gosh, pollsters and weathermen. The only people who continue to get paid no matter how many times they're wrong. Right? So I will, when he says stuff like when he said a week or so ago, I could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose any voters. I got asked about that and I said, no serious candidate for president of the United States says anything like that, and no president of the United States should ever say anything like that. And I had a guy in a town hall meeting in Iowa a couple of days ago raise his hand and said, by the way, did you hear him say that? I said, I did. And he goes, well, tell him he lost 2 votes, mine and my wife's. And so, you know, part of what got him upset yesterday was the clip they played was someone just like you asking me, when are you going to take down Donald Trump? And I said, quite frankly, I think Donald's going to take himself down. And that's the clip they played, and he got upset. And then he said New Jersey was the worst state in America. It's the worst state. It's incredible. It's the worst state. It's unbelievable. It's 50 out of 50. It's the most horrible, awful, unbelievably bad state in my life, even though he has a golf course there. He had 3 different casinos there. And I got to tell you, man, he spends more time in New Jersey than he spends in New York. I see, all the time I hear about him out at the golf course at Bedminster, right? Okay, if it's awful, horrible, terrible, the worst, what are you doing here? All right, so, you know, we'll go through that back and forth. Do not worry. When the moment comes that I have to look him in the eye and engage him, I will, because I've been through it all, and I'm certainly not afraid of him or anybody else on that stage. But sometimes strategy makes you have to do this one step at a time, not all at once. You try to do everything at once, sometimes you drop a few things. Can't afford to drop a few things in a presidential race. Got to try to win, so that's what I'm going to try to do. Is that applause for the answer or for the Trump impersonation? Yes. Sure. Here's where I stand on gun control. We should be spending a heck of a lot more time arresting criminals with guns and leaving innocent law-abiding citizens alone. Here's the problem. Members of Congress and others think that we pass more gun laws and we make ourselves safer, and we don't. And the reason that we don't is because the people who commit crimes with guns don't go into the Walmart and buy their gun there and go through a background check in a 48-hour waiting period. They don't. Because they wouldn't pass a background check, by the way. And they don't want to wait 48 hours. They want their gun now. And so what you see happening is more and more barriers put up in front of law-abiding citizens for getting firearms, and no action by the Obama administration going after the criminals who are using guns in the commissions of crimes. And that's why you see the murder rate going up in Chicago, the murder rate going up in New York, the murder rate going up in Los Angeles. And so my focus on the issue of guns as president would be to appoint an attorney general who would make it his or her priority to go after felons who use guns. and to put them in jail. We have plenty of good laws on that. First offense, 5 years, no parole. Second offense, 10 years, no parole. Time to get those people in jail. And the Second Amendment should mean something. And to me, what it means is that, folks who are following the law have a constitutional right to own a firearm for self-defense, for hunting, or for collecting, or for whatever reason they want. I don't think the founders did it by mistake. Go ahead.
Don't you think that the criminals get around these laws
Oh, they do.
by going on the internet and going to gun shows?
Well, listen, I don't think that most criminals get it through the internet on gun shows. My experience from being a prosecutor for 7 years is most of them buy them on the black market, on the street. And that's where most of them get guns. A lot of them use straw purchasers, right? So they'll send other people who can pass a background check and can do all that stuff into stores to buy, but they're not buying them directly, and they're paying a premium to those straw purchasers to buy the guns for them. I don't think that the gun show loophole, as it's called, is really as big a problem. I think most of the time in the gun shows, you're having people who are collectors and hunters and self-defense folks, not criminals who are wandering in and trying to do it there. They do it other ways, both in the black market, in my experience, and in using straw purchasers. And we did a number of cases against straw purchasers when I was United States Attorney, and you need to continue to do that because those are folks that are profiting from using their good name to arm someone with a bad name. That's what I mean about going after the people who are committing crimes and not after people. Because, listen, these laws are like cotton candy. A lot of these laws are like cotton candy. They taste good when it first gets in your mouth, right? And you're like, oh, this is good. And then like 3 minutes later, you forgot you ate it. Because there's nothing. It's air. We need to do the things that really matter. And I think enforcing the law against criminals are going to be the things that really matter to reduce gun violence. And respecting the Second Amendment for law-abiding people is something that we should do if we respect our Constitution, and I do.
I'm a very conservative, I'm sorry. Hello? I'm a very conservative Christian man, and I'd like to know your views on abortion and gay and lesbian marriage, please.
Sure. On abortion, I'm pro-life, and I'm the first pro-life governor New Jersey's had since Roe versus Wade. We defunded Planned Parenthood 6 years ago, and I've defunded it every year since then because I don't believe government should be funding that kind of activity, and you shouldn't be forced with your taxpayer money to pay for that kind of activity. If people want to pay for it, they should be able to do it with their private contributions if that's where their conscience leads them, but you shouldn't be forced with your tax money to pay for anything that violates your conscience in that severe and significant a way. And on same-sex marriage, I oppose it. Now, the fact is, the matter is now, both in New Jersey and across the entire country, same-sex marriage has now been found legal and constitutional by not only my state Supreme Court before the U.S. Supreme Court, but now the U.S. Supreme Court. So my job as governor is to enforce the law, and I will make sure the law is enforced, and I will do my job because that's the oath I take to do it. But I did veto a bill for same-sex marriage while I was governor of New Jersey, and I vetoed it for this reason. I said, listen, if we're going to make this kind of fundamental change in an institution that has had the very same definition for 2,000 years, 120 politicians in the State House in Trenton shouldn't be making that decision. The voters should. Put it on the ballot, and if voters want to authorize it, then I'll enforce that law. But let people decide this. This is a big issue, an issue of conscience for lots of people on both sides. Let them have their voice be heard, not just through the 120 politicians who, by the way, are just most of them putting their finger up in the air and trying to decide which way is the prevailing wind blowing, like our president, who ran for president saying he was opposed to same-sex marriage, and then once he got his clearly, significantly, safely got his second term, all of a sudden then he was the most pro-gay marriage person we've ever seen in our lives, lighting up the White House in a rainbow. I mean, that's why people are cynical about politics. Barack Obama runs for president and he tells you in the race against John McCain, I will never support same-sex marriage. I don't think that's what marriage is. Then all of a sudden he becomes president and he does something else. Here's the thing about me. You won't have to worry about that. What I tell you I'm going to do today, I will do tomorrow. Even the stuff you don't like. I tell you I'm going to do it and you say to me, I don't like that. I'll say, sorry. This is the whole package. These are the ABCs of me. This is what you get. And I think we need to have more of that in this country and less of the Barack Obama, Marco Rubio, flip-flopping all over the place. Marco Rubio ran for the Senate in 2010, said he would never be for amnesty, he'd never be for legalization of people who came here illegally. Then he sponsors a bill with Chuck Schumer in the United States Senate as the lead Republican that allows for amnesty and legalization. Now he comes back and says, no, I'm really not for that. And I heard him 2 debates ago saying that the reason he now changed his mind is because of terrorism. Okay. Did terrorism not exist in 2013 when he sponsored that bill? Like, was there that moment of time warp when it didn't exist? I mean, stop insulting our intelligence. But that's the stuff you got to worry about. With me, you don't have to worry about that. What you see is what you get. What you hear, you're going to get. And when you like it, that's great. And when you don't, that's the way it goes. The only person that any of us agree with 100% of the time is if we go home and look in the mirror. That's the guy we agree with 100% of the time. Other than that, we don't agree with anybody 100% of the time. All right. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
I was wondering how we got to the state where we could have a person running for president who's under investigation by the FBI. How did we come to that point?
Well,
And your comments on term limits?
Sure. As for Hillary Clinton, the Clintons play by a different set of rules. And the Democratic Party seems to be blind to those things when it comes to the Clintons. There's always an excuse. There's always a reason. Now, she's entitled to the presumption of innocence like anybody else in our society is entitled to the presumption of innocence. But you're not entitled to be president of the United States. And you're not entitled to run for president of the United States. And it looks like the Democrats are going to roll the dice. They're going to take a chance. They're going to nominate someone who's under investigation by the FBI who may, in fact, be indicted. We should only be so lucky. Okay, we should only be so lucky. And so I don't think it's right, but I am prepared to prosecute her on stage next September in the debates. And you look at the rest of this field, who do you think would be better at prosecuting Hillary Clinton on that stage? Believe me, man, I'm the last person she wants to see standing on that stage. She can't wait to see some of those other characters who at times look like a deer in the headlights when they get off script. Nope. You want to see me. Now, term limits, I'm for them. 12 years. 6 terms in the House, 2 terms in the Senate. That's it. You can't get the job done in 12 years in Washington, time to go home anyway. I mean, we've got guys in my state legislature. We've got a guy in my state legislature who this year has started his 44th year in the state legislature. 44th year. You know what I say to him? Go home. Get out. If you can't get it done in 44 years, 44 years. I mean, seriously, this guy got into the legislature when he was 25 years old. He's now 69. Really? You got that many big, great ideas that you got to get moved forward? That's why we need term limits, because they can't help themselves. And by the way, the president has term limits. I, as governor, have term limits. Are we dispensable and they're indispensable? Yeah, the guys with the 13% rating are indispensable. It's time to move them out after 12 years. 12 years should be more than enough for any of them to get stuff done and then go home. Go home and go back to work. Yes, sir.
You are the commander-in-chief of your state.
Yes, I am.
You are a former federal prosecutor.
I am.
How can you possibly have sanctuary cities?
Because I can't control it. It's a federal issue, sir. The immigration laws are federal laws, and they are enforced by the federal government. And the federal government takes those instructions from the President of the United States and the Attorney General of the United States. So one thing I'll make to you really clear, when I'm President of the United States, I will instruct the Attorney General to tell those 200 mayors and those 200 sanctuary cities that either they start enforcing the immigration law or they will get no federal aid of any kind from the federal government. But as governor, if I told them that, they'd just chuckle. So let's wait till we get the real power behind us, and then we'll go do it. Yes, sir.
This is an issue that I really haven't heard much about during this election cycle, but where do you stand on airport security? How much privacy and inconvenience are you willing to sacrifice for national security, and what changes will you make to the TSA?
I don't know. How much are you willing to put up? Give him the microphone, because it's an interesting question. How much inconvenience and invasion of privacy are you willing to put up with in exchange for national security?
Honestly, none.
None?
Ben Franklin said, those willing to sacrifice some liberty for security deserve neither liberty nor security.
Okay. So which parts of the security system offend you the most?
Well, there are a lot of issues. The fact that, you have to get to the airport like 2.5 to 3, maybe 5 hours before your flight, to wait in a 2.5 mile long line to get through security checkpoint that was really just security theater, because you have this technology that has been proven not to actually work. I have a close friend who is a former TSA screener and has kind of let me in on a whole bunch of issues that the agency has faced. The fact that screeners routinely steal from the travelers, and the fact that
Like the baggage handlers too?
oh yeah,
Yeah, so we're going to get rid of baggage handling? I mean, listen, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, I want to tell you something. I don't like the TSA, and I don't think the TSA should have been created in the first place. I like the fact that airports used to be able to hire private security companies to handle that security, and that somehow the fact that they changed uniforms, because it's mostly the same people, they changed uniforms from a private security company to, say, TSA on the side and look more official for the government, I don't think made them one bit more effective in terms of being able to screen. Yeah, we have problems with screening at the airports, but I don't think the problems are that we have too little. I think it's that we have ineffective screening at the airports. And I know it's inconvenient for you to get on a plane and to get there 2 hours ahead of time or 2.5 hours ahead of time. Absolutely know it's inconvenient for you. You know what else is inconvenient? Getting blown up on a plane. Very inconvenient. You're on the plane and someone puts a bomb there, or a guy has a gun and hijacks it and slams it into a building. Very inconvenient for you. Even if you only got there 20 minutes before the flight, if you blow up in midair, incredibly inconvenient. So it seems to me we have to find a balance, and I would think that Mr. Franklin, being the smart guy that he was, when he said if you're willing to sacrifice a little liberty for security, you'll get neither, I think Mr. Franklin wouldn't walk onto a plane right now in the current circumstance of terrorism in the United States with the current weapons that are available that weren't available when old Ben was making those statements, that he might show a little flexibility on it. And so my suggestion to you is you show a little flexibility on it too. I'll go and try to make the TSA more effective, because they need to be more effective. And the tests that have been done over time prove to us that they're not nearly as effective as they need to be. But on the other hand, if you think as president I'm going to take all airport security out so you can show up 20 minutes earlier and not be inconvenienced, not going to do that. Okay, so we got to find a midpoint there between effectiveness and delay, between inconvenience and security. And an effective manager will be able to get that done. The ineffective managers that we've had so far in the Obama administration have had a hard time doing that. So that's where I try to find the balance between the two.
thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Get a little closer to New Hampshire. We used to be an industrial state.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have, so many of our young people are turning to drugs to sell, to buy. How would you turn around the industry or the job availability for these people?
Well, I might have a bit of a disagreement with you over what the motivating factor is for people being involved in the drug trade and for people getting addicted to drugs. But first off, you got to grow the economy. You have to create more jobs. And we talked about that in answer to one of these gentlemen's questions about what you would do in the first 100 days and the idea of reforming the tax code and helping to grow both salaries for the lady who was asking about her friend and childcare and the availability of jobs. So we need to do that. But the drug issue, I think, is a much bigger issue than an economic one. The drug issue is also a disease. It's a disease we need to confront because some folks just make one bad decision one night and they try something. Now, we wish they wouldn't make that decision and ever try it. Mary Pat and I pray every day that our kids don't do that. But people make bad decisions. I can't imagine there's a person in this room who hasn't made a bad decision in your life. You wouldn't look back on it and go, wish I could have that one back. But if it involves drugs and you are genetically predisposed to addiction, there may be no turning back without help. And so part of what I think we need to focus on is for the guys and women who are dealing, they need to go to jail. Well, they're going to have to go there again and again when they're dealing.
They can only get jobs as pizza delivery boys or...
Well, wait a second. So are you saying that if you can't find a job, you're not saying if you can't find a job, it's okay to deal poison, right?
That's what they're doing.
I understand that. And when they make that choice, they need to be incarcerated for a very long period of time. Now, I've already said to you that I want to try to build more jobs and make more opportunity available to folks by lowering tax rates, lowering regulation, allowing more money to stay in your pocket so you can spend it and help create those jobs, allow more money to stay in the pockets of business owners and not in the pockets of government so they can expand their businesses to create jobs. You and I agree on that. More opportunity, there'd be less temptation. But even a good job, in some respects, doesn't pay as much as a drug dealer. A lot of them make a lot of money. And some of them just give into that temptation of being able to make more money. So my point to you is that we got to deal with also the underlying demand of drugs. And that underlying demand of drugs comes from the people who are addicted. And we need to get more treatment for those folks. We're not going to fix a disease by ignoring it. And we're not going to fix a disease by putting someone in jail for the disease. We need to give more treatment to these folks. That's what we've done in New Jersey. 3 years ago, I advocated for a law that got passed that said, if you're a first-time non-dealer, non-violent drug offender, that you no longer go to jail, you go to mandatory inpatient treatment. We've also, as you've started to do here in New Hampshire, but you need to do much, in my view, much more extensively, we've distributed to every one of our police departments 18 months ago in our state, Narcan, and taught them how to use it. In 18 months, we've administered Narcan 7,500 times in New Jersey. That tells you the depth of the problem, but it also tells you that you can save lives and turn people around. And what's happened this year in New Jersey, 2015, this past year, for the first time in 4 years, overdose deaths has gone down rather than up. Our prison population is down 10%. It allows us to close a state prison. We're making progress in our state, and I think you can make it here in New Hampshire too, not just on the economic front, but on the treatment front. More treatment, less inmates, less deaths. And if you're pro-life like I am, and this gentleman asked me about my position on that, you need to be pro-life for the whole life, not just for the 9 months in the womb. I'd suggest to you that the 9 months in the womb is the easy part. They haven't come out yet. They haven't done a darn thing to disappoint us. Well, I'm not saying carrying it is easy. I'm saying the drug problem is a lot easier when they're inside the womb. When they come out, it gets a lot harder to be pro-life. But see, I'm not just pro-life for the 9 months in the womb. I'm pro-life for the 16-year-old drug addict on the floor of the county lockup. Her life is a precious gift from God too, and we got to try to save it. I'm, pro-life for the 42-year-old engineer who had a back problem and started to take Percocet and got addicted. His life is precious too. So I want to have a bigger, broader discussion on this issue. And I want American people to begin to open up their hearts to save lives. That's not being soft on crime, that's being smart. Because by the way, to incarcerate someone in New Jersey costs $49,000 a year. To give them a year of drug treatment costs $24,000. So even if you're just looking at the numbers, it's smarter for us to treat these folks than it is just to incarcerate them, unless they're going to continue to deal and commit violent acts. Those people, in my mind, are called sociopaths, and those folks have to be taught a lesson. But the addict, we need to give them the tools they need to be able to get by. And to the extent that those cross over, we're taking that prison that we're closing, and we're rehabbing it, and we're turning it into a drug treatment facility for folks in the criminal justice system. And so if you have a drug addiction problem and you're in the state prison system, you're not going to be moved to this state prison. We're going to have 700 beds that are providing treatment to addicts in their last year of their sentence, so that when they come out, maybe they got a chance to do something different with their lives. So that's the way we're working on in New Jersey, and that's the kind of solution I try to bring to the whole country. So thanks for raising it.
The job of the president is so vast. I just want to know your qualities and qualifications you'll be looking for in the creation of your cabinet, and are you going to be willing to listen to them when their views are opposed to yours?
Well, I got a number of Democrats in my cabinet now, and I picked them because I thought they were the best people for the jobs. And so I get a lot of disagreement at times, especially from some of those folks. I mean, I'm still the boss and I make the decisions, but yeah, I listen to them. I wouldn't have hired them if I didn't. What I'll be looking for in cabinet is, I don't do the Noah's Ark kind of cabinet selection, You got to have one of these and one of those and one of these and one of those and a pair of these and a pair of those, right? I don't agree with that. You know what I'm looking for? Competence. I want to hire a group of people in my cabinet who I can look at and say, go and do this job and do it well. Don't embarrass me and don't embarrass the people who you're working for. And by the way, your job in your first year, in addition to everything else you're doing, is to return a penny to me for every dollar I send you. You've got to be able to find a penny of waste in your department for every dollar I send you. This is an attainable goal. This is not the normal, let's eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse BS line. where you don't put a dollar amount on it. You don't do anything. You just say, we're going to eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse, and then everybody forgets. I'm going to say to every one of my cabinet officers, give me 1 penny back for every dollar I send you by the end of the year. Motivate their own people to be looking for it, and it's achievable. So that then they've got something that they say they accomplished at the end of the year. In addition to running the department, they say, oh, and by the way, and with the size of our budget, a penny on every dollar is real money. And so, those are the kind of tasks I'll give the cabinet, and those are the kind of people I'll be looking for. And yeah, listen, I listen to people who disagree with me all the time. I'm from New Jersey. It's like whether I want to or not, I hear them. But I do listen to them, and I've changed my mind on things over time because people have convinced me otherwise. You want people around you in your cabinet. Like when something like Hurricane Sandy hits, you're glad you have a cabinet that thinks for themselves. Because at that moment, you can't fix all this stuff by yourself. And man, you need good people. And if they're empowered, then they know what to do. It's like the snowstorm from 2 weekends ago. I got back there, and yeah, it was important for me to be there, and that's why I was there. But they had things pretty well handled. It was their 17th snow emergency as a cabinet in 6 years. And so, we knew what to do. And those are the kind of professionals I want to surround myself in Washington with. People who are smart, who've accomplished something in their lives, not just who've been campaign donors, but have been actually people who have accomplished things. And those are the kind of people I'd want in my cabinet, and the kind of people that I think would then be able to do the job the right way. And the great thing about being president is if your cabinet member does a really good job on something, you get all the credit. It's a tremendous gig. Now, of course, the downside is when they mess up, you get all the blame too. So it's up and down, but that's the way I would go about it. And I think it's really important. It's a great question because the quality of the people you surround yourself with will determine your success or failure because the job is too big to do by yourself. Way too big to do by yourself. So you got to know and have confidence as a manager that you can hire really competent stars and they won't outshine you. You're the president of the United States. You got a pretty good title, pretty good gig. So hire the best people you can. That's what I would do. And the only thing I would ask of them is to remember that I'm the boss, that they can argue to me anything they want to argue to me as vigorously as they want to, but then I get to decide. Because that's who the people elected to decide, not them, me. And if they disagree with it, I'd hope that they would just swallow it and follow direction. And if it's a fundamental disagreement that goes at the core of who they are, then they need to leave. But at least we'd be honest with each other about that up front. And that's what the way I'd handle the
Thank you.
cabinet. Thank you. My staff is telling me I can take one more question, which means I will take two. The reason for that is I want to show them that I'm still the boss. You laugh. I know you laugh, but here's the thing. You know what it's like to run for president? You are surrounded every day by people who are younger than you, significantly younger than you, and they tell you where to go and what to do every minute of the day. The only place that I am free from the tyranny of the young is right in here in this circle. This is where it all happens, right here. I get to keep the microphone. So I'm taking two questions. So I'll take that gentleman. I always like to say this. I'll take a question from the gentleman behind the bar. Right, that's a good thing to be able to say at a town hall meeting, right? The guy behind the bar has a question. Yes, sir.
All right. Governor Maggie Hassan, Democratic governor of the state, said no to Syrian refugees coming into this state. What's your view on Syrian refugees coming into this country?
I said no. And a very simple reason why I said no. Because I listened to the FBI director, because he's the expert in this area. And he said he cannot effectively vet these people and guarantee the American people that the people he's letting in do not mean to do us harm. And until he can effectively vet those people, we can't let them in. Because the President of the United States' first job is to protect the safety and security of the American people. Now, it's not that I don't care for the Syrian people, I do. And 250,000 of them being murdered by their own government is an unacceptable act of violence. But I will not replace that violence with violence against my own countrymen. And so I need to protect them first. When the FBI director tells me that we can effectively vet these people, then we can have a conversation about accepting Syrian refugees. But there will be no conversation with me before the FBI director can look me in the eye and tell me, Mr. President, I can promise you that every one of these people we let in is not a terrorist. Until that time, I won't do it. All right. I love this. Like three people pointing to this kid, right? And he's got a tie on, and he looks really nice, and he's got a great smile, and he's had his hand up, and now the people are pointing to him. So what kind of heel would I be, right? To go like, yeah, no, I don't think so. Let me go to somebody else. No, all right, I'll go to you. I'm going to you, young man. What's your name?
Thomas.
Thomas, what do you got for me?
I'm from Maine, and I know one of the biggest.
You got a great governor then, boy. Paul LePage, baby.
He loves
Paul
me.
LePage. He does love me, and I love Paul LePage back. Paul LePage is a warrior. Want to know what a warrior Paul LePage is? He went to Iowa yesterday and spoke at caucuses for me. That's a warrior, baby. Let me tell you. He did a great job for me last night.
Well, my question for you is one for the government. Well, that Maine has a struggle with is the energy crisis. I know a lot of our mills right now are closing because energy is too high, and that's for all of the Northeast. But as president, how would you solve that for not just the Northeast, but for the country?
Sure. You know, North America can be the energy continent if we want to be. With the oil and natural gas reserves we now have and are able to access because of the new technologies that we can have in order to bring them up from underground, with the great energy reserves that Canada has and Mexico, North America, if we were willing to all work together, could be the energy continent, not only to supply each other, but to supply a good part of the rest of the world with energy. We should be working on that right now. Not only does that mean that we're going to help the rest of the world be more peaceful, because if you're getting your energy from Canada or Mexico or the United States, it's much better off than if you're getting it from Vladimir Putin or the mullahs in Iran. We're not going to be asking you for anything in return except for some money. They're going to be asking you for a lot more. What that will also do is lower energy prices here. We've seen that in New Jersey. Energy prices in New Jersey have gone down in the last 18 months. Electric bills have gone down 9% in the last 18 months. Part of the reason for that is that we have built pipelines from the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania into New Jersey to bring lower cost natural gas from Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania to our state. It's not only going to help lower energy costs for everyday folks who are paying to heat and turn on their lights, but it's also going to help to lower costs for manufacturers. And the way we compete for manufacturing jobs in this country is not to lower our labor costs. There's only two major costs to manufacturing: labor and energy. We need to lower our energy costs, and we can do that and help create more manufacturing jobs, because we'll be much more competitive on energy costs if we work together with Canada and Mexico than we will be if China tries to get into this business. China now won't be able to compete with us from an energy perspective if we do it the right way. So those are the kind of things I think we need to do. And we need a president who's going to be willing to be aggressive on this and to be able to set goals for what we should be doing and not be dictated to by the environmental community, who don't want any of this to happen. I'm also in favor of alternatives. I don't have a problem with alternatives. New Jersey is the third largest solar producing state in the country. I have no problem with that. But we're not going to heat our entire country with solar energy or wind. But we need to be examining all different types of energy options, including nuclear. 53% of New Jersey's electricity comes from nuclear. The most densely populated state in America, and it comes from nuclear power, 53%. We can do a lot better than we're doing now, and we should, but we need an aggressive national energy policy that also brings in our neighbors and our friends from Canada and Mexico. We do that, we're going to be on the right path, not only to have lower cost energy in the United States, but to have greater peace and stability around the world. It's a good geopolitical move as well. Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Really good. All right. So, two things to say to you before I go. First one is thank you. Thank you for taking the time in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon to come out here and to listen to me and to ask questions and to make a difference in terms of your decision on who to vote for next Tuesday. I hope I've made a difference for you too. And I want to tell you that I'm here today to ask for your vote. I don't want there to be any ambivalence about that when you walk out. Like, does he really want me to vote for him? Yes. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Earlier in the summer, I was very happy to be in your top three. You New Hampshire folks use that phrase all the time. Oh, Governor, you're in my top three. Well, that's great. In August, that's really good. In February, a week beforehand, don't want to be in your top three anymore. I want to be your top one. I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking you for your vote because I think you really want to have someone who can be tough and strong and direct and knows how to manage things, can get Congress under control, and can move this country back in the right direction. And so I ask for your vote on that basis. And I hope that you'll be willing to give it to me on Tuesday night, because if you do, we will win here. There is no one, especially after last night's results, there is no one who has an idea of who's going to win here. The inevitability of the Donald Trump train has slowed down after last night, and everybody else is bunched within 2 points of each other. You all are going to make some big decisions this week, and I hope you make them in my direction. If you do, we'll win on Tuesday night. Not just do well, but we'll win. Now, second thing I want to tell you, especially because I'm here with a group of veterans in a place that is really solemn for veterans. Any of these halls across the state of New Hampshire or anywhere else in our country are not only places where veterans gather to have fun, to interact, to work with each other, to help each other, to host other gatherings like this to help our democracy, but there's also a solemn place because those sacrifices are memorialized here and in places just like it. 3 or 4 nights ago, Mary Pat and I were in Burlington, Iowa, doing a town hall meeting. And one of the questions, a gentleman raised his hand, and I called on him. And he said, Governor, I want to know what kind of commander-in-chief you're going to be. And before you answer, I want you to know this is personal, because my wife and I are sending our oldest son to Iraq in 4 months. And he sat down, and when he sat down, I turned and looked to his left, and I saw his wife sitting next to him, and she was crying. And at that moment, I have to tell you, everybody, I stopped being a presidential candidate, and I started being predominantly a father. As I said before, Mary Pat and I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, 22, 19, 15, and 12. And as I watched tears in that woman's eyes and the tears well up in her husband's eyes, I thought to myself, what an extraordinary sacrifice they're making. Yeah, their son is making an enormous sacrifice by going and serving our country in Iraq, but they are making an enormous sacrifice too. This most precious thing in their life that they nurtured from the womb for 9 months, and then through infancy and childhood and young adulthood, the most precious possession in their life, one of their children, they're now handing over to our nation to fight for the principles and the values that we believe in. Many men and women in this room understand both that sacrifice personally and the sacrifice of sending your children as well. And there were 3 veterans in that room, at least 3, but 3 that I identified clearly because they had hats on. There was one guy who was in his 90s in a wheelchair. He had a hat on that's a World War II veteran. There was another guy sitting in a chair, told me he was 82, and he was a Korean War veteran. And then there was another younger man sitting in another part of the room with a hat on that said Iraqi Freedom Veteran. He looked to me like he was probably in his 30s. And I was thinking as I looked at those hats and looked at that couple and thought about the question, I thought for a moment about the people who sent those men into war. You know, for that World War II veteran, it was Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman. For that Korean veteran, it was Harry Truman and Dwight Eisenhower. And for that Iraqi freedom veteran, it was George W. Bush. Put aside for a moment the politics that you agree with or disagree with any of those men. I think we could all agree that those were serious, significant leaders in our country's history who took their responsibilities as commander-in-chief solemnly and did the very best that they could to be able to make sure that they performed those duties in a way that would honor the young men and women who were serving underneath them. So when you go in to vote on Tuesday night, what I'd like to suggest to you with respect is that when you're about to mark your ballot, imagine that you had that mother and father on either side of you, and that they were watching when you marked your ballot, and that you had to turn and look at them and say, I believe that fill in the blank, whoever you're voting for, is the very best person to put your son's life in their hands, because that's the way they're viewing their vote. Their precious son's life will now be in the hands of a new commander-in-chief, a new personification of America, a new symbol of America and what we stand for and what our values are. I would suggest to you that not every name on that ballot, you could look into the eyes of those parents and say, no, you'll be okay with this guy as your son's commander-in-chief. That's how serious this is, everybody. It's been an entertaining campaign, believe me. I've been entertained just as much as you've been. I've participated in the entertainment. It's been interesting. Think about it. We've had governors and former governors, senators and former senators, some business leaders, and a character. And It's been very interesting to watch and to participate in. But Showtime is over. And if I had any doubt that Showtime was over, any of that doubt ended looking at those two parents. It's game time now. And we not only owe it to each other and to our families, we owe it to them to make a serious, sober choice on Tuesday night, to choose the person you think is most tested, most mature, most ready to be president of the United States. Not the person who's the loudest, not the person who gives the best speech, the person who you believe is ready and understands the awesome nature of those responsibilities and will make you proud when they're acquitting them, but more important than making you proud, make that mother and father proud. And make them feel when they go to bed at night just a little bit more secure than they felt before with Barack Obama as the commander-in-chief. New Hampshire Republicans are the most powerful people in the world right now, bar none. You're going to take this race from 11 candidates probably down to 4 or 5. 4 or 5 people that the rest of the country will have even an opportunity to consider. You're going to cut this field in half or more on Tuesday night. Exercise it with great care. You always have for 100 years. As the first in the nation primary, you have an extraordinary track record of picking the people who eventually wind up being president of the United States. I hope you consider it in exactly the same way on Tuesday night. Our country is angry about what's going on in Washington, D.C. I understand that, so am I. But your vote cannot only be an exercise of anger. It also has to be an exercise of conscience. Because American leadership is both a burden and an opportunity, but it is never a choice. If America doesn't lead and have someone who knows how to lead, the rest of the world suffers along with America. And so I'm ready. If I didn't think I was ready, if I didn't believe in my heart I was ready, I wouldn't be in front of you. 4 years ago, lots of people urged me to run for president, and I said no for one simple reason. I knew in my heart I wasn't ready to be president. And the only thing worse than running for president and losing is running for president and winning when you're not ready. You are the dog that caught the garbage truck. And it's the biggest garbage truck in the world. You don't want that. We just went through that for 7 years. For 7 years, we put up with someone who took the job because the political opportunity was there, but he wasn't ready. Don't send another well-intentioned, well-spoken, untrained person into the chair in the Oval Office, because I guarantee you the result will not be the same, it will be worse. Because the problems that this next president is inheriting are worse than the ones that the last one did. So I'm asking for your vote on Tuesday night because I believe I'm the one who's most ready. And if you honor me with your vote, I promise you that I'll honor you with a presidency that's not only successful, but one that you can be proud of. If we work together to do that, we're going to do very well on Tuesday night, but more importantly, we're going to beat Hillary Clinton in November, and we're going to restore pride and faith and trust in our government again in Washington, D.C. So thanks for coming and spending the afternoon. I appreciate it.